The destruction of mankind may not be the will of Mother Nature. The human race is all too capable of destroying itself. The last image anyone would see is a 60-foot-long projectile streaking across the sky, leaving a blazing trail of smoke behind. Then, a flash. The explosion would unleash an unimaginable amount of nuclear energy and obliterate nearly everything within 2 miles of the impact zone. Instantly, millions of lives would be extinguished. After only days, the death toll would rise even higher.
There would be so much smoke that would go up into the atmosphere that it would cause global climate change unprecedented in human history.
Temperatures would quickly plummet, causing a nuclear winter not so different from the conditions that would follow a supervolcano eruption.
The smoke that would result would create basically ice age conditions over the planet. In grain-growing regions of the United States and Europe, for example, Iowa and the Ukraine, temperatures would not rise above freezing for about 2 years. But the direct explosions themselves might cause close to 1 billion casualties. The bulk of humanity would starve to death.
Today, there are at least 9 countries with nuclear arsenals that are ready to launch on 10 minutes' notice. Their ICBMs, short for intercontinental ballistic missiles, can attack a target more than 8,000 miles away at the touch of a button. That's farther than the distance between Washington, D.C. and Beijing. The end of the Cold War may have reduced the immediacy of the threat, but with so many missiles still pointed at the sky, the slightest miscommunication could be all it takes to set the apocalypse in motion.
This danger, I think, has increased particularly for Russia because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it lost much of its early warning capability. Its eyes and its ears were impaired, and so the potential for a mistake increased. And there was one very clear example of this when in 1995 in Norway a scientific rocket was launched which was initially interpreted as a submarine-launched missile attack by the United States.
On January 25, 1995, the United States and Norway deployed a rocket intended to study the Northern Lights. But the Russians didn't get the memo, and the launch turned out to be much more than a simple science experiment. Within minutes, Russian forces were on high alert.
So we came much closer than most people would like to think to actually seeing a response based upon this mistaken identification.
The dissolution of the Soviet Union left the world with a frightening byproduct, a deadly arsenal of nuclear weapons up for grabs among several volatile new regimes. In the political chaos that followed, it's believed some of the bombs may have slipped through the cracks. If these loose nukes turn up in the wrong hands, we may yet become casualties of the Cold War.
One of these weapons going off could trigger a much wider war, a much greater outbreak, could destabilize into anarchy.
With the increased potency of today's nukes, it wouldn't take an all-out war between the superpowers to trigger the apocalypse. Even a regional exchange between two enemies such as India and Pakistan could have horrifying global consequences.
Some new studies suggest that, in fact, even a very limited nuclear exchange in India and Pakistan, or any place else in the world, might actually jeopardize the climate around the rest of the world.
The latest research proves just how catastrophic a nuclear war between India and Pakistan would be for the rest of us. The effects of even limited nuclear fallout are nothing to sneeze at. Will our species be able to prevent nuclear self-annihilation? To completely negate the threat, virtually every existing warhead would have to be destroyed. And with numerous Cold War nukes still unaccounted for, that scenario seems highly unlikely.